Alright, in BL Heli 32 there's this music editor which you go in, and for each ESC you have to turn it on, but set some intervals because otherwise the music sounds like an old fax machine. The notation is like back in the days of BASIC. You write the letter as it would be explained in text, like the note C or C sharp, D, E, etc. Then you have your octaves, which on a piano, 4 is in the middle of the piano. So your note length, which here is shown in fractions, but you don't actually have to use the fraction. You only need the second number of the fraction. So here's an example of the note C, written 3 times. It won't play anything. It doesn't know what to do with it. So you need to give it a value of an octave. Here's the middle of the piano. There's or 4 or 5 or 6 or 7, doesn't matter. You can only use those 4 though. Within that framework, you also have to remember every time you pass the last B in an octave that you have to change the number upward. So if your scale is playing and passes the B goes above the B, you have to change the number up. If you're in 5, you go to 6 for the next few notes, and then you come back down and you're in 5. Here's how you would write out the notation of in-between notes, A sharp, B flat, F sharp, E flat, etc. These kind of textual notations are common, so that's not the unusual part. Choosing an octave, that you have to sort of know a little bit about your keyboard or about your instrument to do that. So, or at least understand the music line on a keyboard. So here I am in the 6th octave, and that's going to be fairly high pitched. But see, I passed the B6, so I go to C7. And then here we are down in 4, I believe. Yeah. Now you won't still hear anything play yet, because now they need a duration. So it knows where you are on the keyboard. Now you need to strike and hold it, essentially, is what that amounts to. So let's say this is a quarter note. This is a half note, a whole note, etc. An eighth note rather, and this is how you would write out a whole note. But you don't have to, as I said, you can leave off the slash and the top number, the 1. It'll assume all that. The 4 represents a quarter note, the 2 represents a half note, the 8 represents an eighth note, and the 1 represents a whole note. If you can grasp that so far, you're going to be okay. Half note, whole note, etc. Quarter note. Okay? Because it doesn't give you dotted notes, you don't have the option of partial or syncopation. You have to use these pauses. They can be very handy in a complete stop, like a whole note, P representing pause. But you can also make them very, very brief, like a breath on an instrument. The spacing of the notation sounds more natural than robotic. These pauses give you the impression that it has character. You can see here, if you want to be able to see these better, this, because it'll keep stringing these together. You have to, if you want to see the notation separately, if you're trying to follow along or edit or find one specific note that's doing the wrong thing, it doesn't care about your visual ability. It just cares about the values that you've given it in the order that you set them. So you can see that's missing all kinds of spaces and timing, and the general length is wrong, and that's a sample that you will hear in the last example I play. Let me load a brief one and you can see now the values that I had for these, because once you play it you can determine, oh, I'd like that to take a little longer or to go a little faster, or I'd like a little more space in between. So to put that on each motor, I have to go to each individual ESC and do the same settings. Here's an example of my first one. But then I learned I can do multiple tracks. In order to do that, first of all, let me say you absolutely have to have some space here. I brushed over that earlier, but this is critical in separating notes. This range right here seems to work really well and sound most natural. This can be anything. You will find as you build the thing that you might like it a little faster, a little slower, and this is how you would do that. Um, it also helps with the spacing. If you lengthen this, you'll hear these intervals a little better, rather than just bumped right up against each other. All right, so okay, this is my recorded text. I don't know what that's about. Um, you'll see it just says it records the length and the interval, and I'll remember those and highlight this part. Copy it, 13 and 8. Okay, so I'll get rid of that. Now, 13, 8, text. Okay, we're on ESC4. If I were to go somewhere else, it's not there. So what that shows me is it is possible to put different things on each one, and you don't want them conflicting. So in a band, four different things are playing simultaneously and making music. So that's what I've done. Now, what this melody is Mozart. Let's see, I threw this together. I think this is what's on the 10-inch we've been working with. So if I wanted to do multiple parts, I could separate each ESC into a different instrument. I haven't done that yet. What I've done is more like a choir. I've just copied and pasted the same melody, and then changed the notation by a third or a fifth, or in some cases you create the harmony by just humming it, and then you have to know what those notes are in relation to the original notes. But if you have that ability to harmonize in your head and then imagine what it's going to sound like, or at least know that what you're humming is going to match the melody, um, you can write that out then. The problem here, uh, once you get away from each individual, let me separate these out, and you can look at uh, uh, what that sounds like. This da 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 da, and then there's a pause, and then da 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 da. It repeats. I'll play that for you. Okay, so to build a harmony for that, I'd have to replicate all of this and then replace all of the actual notes with their harmonic counterpart. And that would give me the things you heard. The last two you heard were just harmonies all in the same rhythm. Um, just know that it is possible to break it all down into pieces. The next thing that we would learn would be, let me just write it out here so you can see it. The language is called RTTTL, sometimes shortened to be RTTL, and that is ringtone language. Ringtone translation, text translation language. Ringtone text translation language. Okay, and it's slightly different, but it allows you to do all of this cool stuff on an 8-bit ESC. And you can do this with a special ESC configurator that is a partner to the BL Heli, and it's called Bluejay Configurator. And with that, you are able to build 4-part harmonies and listen to them in real time before you apply them, right there in the application, a thing we can't do here. It will take a few episodes of this for you to fully grasp the concept, but this one's already run on a little too long, so I'm going to break it into pieces, and we'll walk through how to actually compose something.